Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our chats with Emily as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are in the Johnson edition and we turn now to poem 622. To know just how he suffered would be dear. Now, this is a fascinating poem for a number of reasons. The scholar Priestess pointed out that Emily was what he calls true Puritan in her intense curiosity about a person's dying. There's a whole genre of literature within this trending that asks, what's it like to witness someone passing and paying close attention to it? And in fact, the scholar Priest will point out, when her friend Benjamin Newton died in 1854, she actually wrote a letter, it's letter number 153, to his pastor, who she had never met this person, but she asked, quote, "Please, sir, to tell me if he was willing to die, and if you think him at home, I should love so much to know certainly that he was today in heaven." Now, Emily, the great poet of curiosity, the wonders, what is it like to be there when someone is dying? Now, we're not going to know in this poem who she's referencing. Now, our assumption is that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. I'm hopeful that you worked through our set of introductory comments. I'm as well hopeful that you've already studied the preceding 621 poems. We just finished with 621. He asked no other thing. Now, because we don't know, emphasis on the word know, because we don't know who she's referencing, we kind of read this poem without really understanding fully who she's talking about. I want you to pay attention to the use of the word know 4 times. Again, back to our big 5 in our study, epistemology is the first of those. What can you know? And of course for Emily, she wants to find something about what it's like when the person died. She says it this way: to know just how he suffered would be dear, to know if any human eyes were near, to whom he could entrust his wavering gaze until it settled broad on paradise. To know if he was patient, part content, was dying as he thought, or different. Was it a pleasant day to die? And did the sunshine face his way? What was his furthest mind of home or God, or what the distant say, at news that he ceased human nature such a day? And wishes, had he any, just his sigh, accented, had been legible to me? And was he confident until ill fluttered out in everlasting well? And if he spoke, what name was best, what last, what one broke off with at the drowsiest? Was he afraid or tranquil? Might he know how consciousness could grow, till love that was and love to best to be meet, and the junction be eternity. Now, this is a remarkable poem in terms of its punctuation. Notice how she asks all these questions without a single question mark. Did you see it? So it's fascinating. In other words, it's as if she wants to know information that she knows she's not going to get an answer to, so all these questions are rhetorical, and yet she'll ask it. She begins with epistemology. What can I learn? What can I gain from watching someone or hearing about somebody dying? She wants to know. To know just how he suffered. Again, we don't know who the he is, and of course, her use of the word suffering is compelling all the way through her poetry. She says, if I could just know that, that would be dear, important. To know if any human eyes, notice capital, were near, right? We think about Donne's valediction forbidding mourning, as virtuous men pass mildly away and whisper to their souls to go, while some of their sad friends do say the breath goes now and some say no. She's playing with that same word picture. Was there somebody there when he went? To whom at least he could entrust his wavering gaze. I think this wavering gaze takes us back to 465. I heard a fly buzz when I died. Remember in that classic that her eyes tracked to the fly trying to get out of the room. Where did his eyes go? Where did his gaze go? Until it settled broad on paradise. That is to say, she's going to assume that this person who died went on to paradise. To know, again, we're back to the third one, if he was patient, part content, was dying as he thought, or different. Again, no question marks here at all. Was it a pleasant day to die, and did the sunshine face his way? That's a brilliant insight, right? When he died, did sunshine face his face? Maybe literally, but for sure metaphorically here. What was his furthest mind. What was he thinking about? Of home or God? Or what the distant say at news when he ceased human nature? It's a brilliant way, of course, to talk about the end of a life. Such a day. And then she'll go to wishes. Had he any? In other words, last requests. Just his sigh, accented. Some have pointed out that her use of the word accented had been legible to me, suggests that whoever she's talking about, she would have known well, maybe known so well that she could figure out even from his sigh what's going on. And was he confident until ill fluttered out? And now, like a bird with this use of the word flutter, takes us back, of course, to poem 9 that we studied, 145, as well as 232, the other uses of the word flutter. In everlasting well. Now, the word well is such an amazing word for her, right? Because, of course, we can think about that deep thing into the earth that you draw water from, right? Or the word well can mean like, as in well, 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 to quote Hamlet, right? Everlasting well. Heaven is being referenced, we're going to guess here. And if he spoke, what name was best? Now, this is interesting. In other words, did he mention me? We can't help but think of Conrad's Heart of Darkness, right? At the end of that novel, when, of course, the finance of Kurtz is asking, did he mention my name, right? As opposed to what he actually said, the horror. What one broke off with at the drowsiest as he was getting ready to leave? Again, notice drowsy as in dying is like sleeping. Was he afraid or tranquil? Might he know, and so it takes us back to the beginning of the poem, how consciousness could grow. It's brilliant way to think about it. In other words, as one is dying, is one's consciousness aware that one's consciousness might expand beyond the process of death? And obviously there's a lot of debate about that. Till love that was, and love too best to be. Notice the repetition of the word to, only two different words. Meet. What is death? Well, it's love that was and love too best to be. Maybe she's speaking about herself. Maybe she's engaged in this idea of marriage in the heaven group of poems that we've been looking at and studying. You'll remember 577 comes to mind. Till love that was and love too best to be meet. And the junction, notice capitalized, be eternity. Her use of the word be in this poem is remarkable in that she is suggesting, I wonder if there was any evidence that there is afterlife. Is there any evidence of that in this experience? At 2, I think the message here is that death is a curious phenomenon. We're always longing to figure it out. At 2b, of course, these uses of the word no 4 times. This is an epistemological poem, no doubt. At 3a, well, think about all of the texts that you have studied where last words at death matter so much, from Beowulf's last words to, of course, Hamlet's final words, the rest is silence. We mentioned Heart of Darkness. What are the titles that for you are most compelling? And as well, there is for Emily other poems that will be studied. When we get to 648, for example, we'll play a similar game. Promise this when you be dying. Some shall summon me, mine belong your latest sighing, mine to belt your eye, not with coins, though they be mented from an emperor's hand. Be my lips the only buckle your low eyes demand. Mine to stay when all have wondered, to devise once more, if the life be too sundered, life of mine restore. Poured like this, my whole libation, just that you should see bliss of death, life's bliss extol through imitating you. Mine to guard your narrow precedent, to seduce the sun longest on your south, to linger largest dews of morn, to demand in your low favor, lest the jealous grass greener lean, or fonder cluster round some other face. Mine to supplicate Madonna, if Madonna be, could behold so far a creature, Christ omitted me. Just to follow your dear future, ne'er so far behind, for my heaven had I not been most enough denied. And then when we do 734, we'll come back to this poem as well. If he were living, dare I ask, and how if he be dead? And so around the words I went of meeting them afraid, I hinted changes, lapse of time, the surfaces of years I touched with caution lest they crack, and show me to my fears, reverted to adjoining lives, adroitly turning out wherever I suspected graves. 'Twas prudenter, I thought, and he, I pushed with sudden force in face of the suspense, was buried. He, my life, just holds the trench. Finally, to own a poem like this at 3B, what was a time in your life when you did wonder about the experience of death and dying? And if you have had, I'll call it the privilege, to be with someone passing, what was that experience like? And how are you being challenged by Emily? I hope so. Thank you.